He went for a cow and returned with an Apache wife who gave him love and hope. Every day his family struggled to make ends meet. They had little land and no modern tools, so farming was hard work. His parents were old and his younger siblings depended on him for help. Despite all the hardships, Ramesh was hopeful. He always believed that with a little courage and hard work, life could change for the better. One morning, as the sun rose and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Ramesh sat outside his small hut, thinking about what the family needed. The most urgent problem was their lack of livestock. A cow could provide milk, which would help the family eat better and even earn a little money if they sold some milk in the village market. Ramesh had saved some money over the months, and today he finally decided that he would go to the next town to buy a cow. The journey, however, was not an easy one. The town was several miles away, and the path was not a straight road but a rough trail through forests, rivers, and hills. Ramesh packed a small bag with some bread, a little rice, and water. He took a stick with him to help walk through difficult paths and to protect himself from wild animals. He hugged his parents and promised to return soon with a cow. Their eyes were filled with both hope and worry. As he started walking, Ramesh felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. The early morning air was fresh, and birds sang in the trees above, making the journey feel magical in its own way. He walked for hours, sometimes along narrow paths between thick trees, sometimes over open fields where the wind whispered through the tall grass. Along the way, he met other travelers, a merchant carrying fruits, a shepherd with his sheep, and children playing near a small stream. Each encounter made him feel part of a bigger world beyond his village. By midday, Ramesh reached the edge of a dense forest. He had heard stories from villagers about people living in the forest, some of whom were kind, while others were not. His heart beat faster, but he reminded himself to stay calm and careful. As he walked deeper, he noticed signs of a small community. Smoke rising from chimneys, footprints in the soil, and faint voices speaking a language he had never heard before. Curiosity filled him, but he stayed focused on his goal. He had come for a cow, and he could not let anything distract him. Suddenly, he saw a small clearing, and there, a few villagers were tending to their livestock. Among them was a woman. She stood out to him immediately. She had strong, confident features, and her eyes were kind but curious. She was helping an elder carry water, and her movements were graceful and careful. Ramesh felt a strange mix of surprise and admiration. He had never met someone like her before. The villagers noticed him too and looked at him with mild suspicion. Ramesh raised his hands to show he meant no harm. The woman approached him. She spoke in a language he did not understand, but her tone was gentle. Ramesh tried to communicate through gestures, pointing to his bag and then making a motion for a cow. At first, there was some confusion. The villagers whispered among themselves, unsure of why a stranger had come to their community. But the woman seemed to understand his purpose. She smiled slightly and motioned for him to follow her. She led him to a small pen where a few cows grazed peacefully. Ramesh's eyes lit up. They were not the biggest cows, but they were healthy, and he could tell they were well taken care of. He tried to ask about the price, but the language barrier made it difficult. The woman laughed softly and gestured for him to wait. She went to speak with an elder, and soon the elder nodded and smiled. It seemed they were willing to help him. While waiting, Ramesh observed the village. The homes were simple, made of wood and stone, but they looked sturdy. Children played barefoot in the yard, laughing and shouting joyfully. People were working together, helping one another with daily chores. Ramesh felt a warmth he had never felt in his own village. There was a sense of community here, a quiet strength in the way everyone supported each other. The woman came back and gestured for him to follow her again. She led him to a small hut and offered him some food, bread and fresh milk from the cows. Ramesh was touched by this kindness. He had traveled far, hungry and tired, but her generosity made him feel welcome and safe. He realized that this journey, which had started simply as a trip to buy a cow, was becoming something more. He was learning about people, their ways of life, and their kindness. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in deep red and purple, Ramesh prepared to leave. He had not yet purchased a cow, but he felt that this encounter was important. The woman smiled at him and nodded, as if understanding his thoughts. Ramesh knew that he would return to this place, not only for the cow but because he felt a connection here he could not explain. Walking back through the forest, Ramesh thought about his life, his family, and the unexpected turn his day had taken. He realized that journeys were not always about the destination. Sometimes they were about the people you met, the lessons you learned, and the small moments that changed the way you saw the world. He felt a spark of hope, a quiet excitement for the future, and a newfound curiosity about life beyond his village. By the time he returned home that evening, the sky was dark and the first stars appeared. His family greeted him with anxious faces. He smiled and told them about the journey, the village, and the kind woman who had helped him. They listened with amazement. He had gone to buy a cow, but he had returned with something more valuable, a story of kindness, hope, and a new beginning. That night, as Ramesh lay down to sleep, he thought about the woman and the village he had just left. He did not know it yet, but this encounter would change his life in ways he could never have imagined. The journey for a cow was only the beginning of a much larger adventure, one that would bring love, hope, and new dreams into his life. Ramesh could not stop thinking about the village he had discovered and the kind woman who had helped him. The memory of her smile and gentle guidance stayed with him long after he returned home. The cow he had intended to buy now seemed less important compared to the warmth and hope he had felt in that small community. Over the next few days, he found himself restless. His work at home, though necessary, felt ordinary. Every time he walked through the fields or helped his family with chores, his mind wandered to the village in the forest. Finally, after much thought, Ramesh decided he would return to the village. This time he planned to stay longer to see more and perhaps to learn about the people and their way of life. Early one morning, he packed a small bag once again. This time he carried not just food and water, but also small gifts from his family, dried fruits, simple cloth, and a few tools that could be useful to the villagers. His parents were worried, but understood his desire to explore and learn. They blessed him and reminded him to be careful. The journey through the forest felt different this time. Ramesh noticed small details he had missed before, the sound of leaves rustling in the wind, the chirping of birds, the soft hum of insects in the undergrowth. He followed the same trail but felt less fear and more curiosity. Each step brought anticipation and excitement. He wondered what the villagers would think of him now that he was returning, and he hoped the woman would remember him. When he reached the clearing, he saw the village again. Smoke rose from chimneys, and people were moving about their daily tasks. Children laughed and ran through the narrow paths, carrying small bundles of firewood. Ramesh took a deep breath, feeling a mix of nervousness and eagerness. As he walked closer, he saw her, the woman who had helped him before. She was standing by a small stream, washing clothes, her movements calm and rhythmic. She noticed him immediately and paused. Ramesh waved, and she smiled, a little surprised but welcoming. Though they did not speak the same language, they had already established a simple understanding through gestures and kindness. She beckoned him to follow her, and he did, careful not to rush or disturb the quiet harmony of the village. She led him to a small gathering of people near the center of the village. The elder he had met before was present, along with a few other adults. Ramesh greeted them respectfully, bowing slightly and offering the small gifts from his village. The woman helped explain through gestures what the gifts were and that he came in peace. Slowly, smiles appeared on the villagers' faces, and the initial tension melted away. The elder nodded approvingly and invited Ramesh to sit with them. He offered him food again, fresh corn, bread, and milk from the cows. As they ate, Ramesh noticed how each person worked together in harmony. Men and women carried out their tasks efficiently, children helped each other, and even the elderly were respected and included in daily decisions. It was a community built on cooperation, trust, and respect. Over the next few days, Ramesh stayed in the village. He helped with chores, tending to the animals, fetching water, and repairing small fences. Each task gave him a new perspective on life. The work was hard but meaningful. He learned the rhythm of the village and started feeling a sense of belonging he had never experienced before. The woman was always near, guiding him gently, sometimes teaching him their ways, sometimes laughing at his mistakes. One afternoon, while helping her carry water from the stream, Ramesh finally managed to communicate a bit more with her. Through gestures and simple words, he learned her name was Aon. She had grown up in this village and knew every corner of the forest and fields. She was strong, independent, and wise, but her eyes also held a softness that comforted those around her. Ramesh felt drawn to her not only for her kindness, but for her spirit and strength. As they worked side by side, Ramesh began to notice the beauty in small things. The way Aon's laughter could lighten the mood, how she spoke gently to the children, and how she respected the elders. He realized that life here was different from his village. Here, people valued connection, trust, and kindness above all else. The more time he spent with Aon and the villagers, the more he felt that he was learning something far more important than buying a cow. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, the villagers gathered around a fire. They sang songs of their ancestors, told stories, and shared memories. Ramesh sat quietly, watching the flickering flames and listening to the sounds of community. Aon sat beside him, offering a simple smile, as if inviting him to be part of their world. That night, he realized how deeply he had come to care for this place and its people. Days turned into a week, and Ramesh continued to help wherever he could. He learned to milk the cows, weave baskets, and even prepare simple meals. Every skill he learned made him feel more connected, not just to the village, but to life itself. Aon often watched him with quiet amusement, occasionally offering guidance or teasing him gently when he made mistakes. Their bond grew silently but steadily, built on trust, shared effort, and mutual respect. Ramesh also began to learn about the history of the village and its people. They had survived hardships, preserved their traditions, and maintained harmony with nature. He listened attentively as Aon shared stories through gestures, drawings in the dirt, and simple words he was starting to understand. He felt inspired by their resilience and commitment to community. In many ways, he realized, he had never truly understood what life could be like until now. One day, while resting under a large tree after helping herd the cows, Ramesh noticed Aon watching him. She smiled softly and pointed to the horizon, then to him, and finally to the village. Though he did not understand immediately, he felt the meaning. She was showing him that he could belong here if he chose, that life could be richer than he had imagined. Ramesh felt a rush of emotion, hope, gratitude, and an unfamiliar but welcome sense of love. The week passed quickly, and soon Ramesh knew he had to return to his village, but he could not leave without saying goodbye properly. The villagers gathered to see him off, offering blessings and food for his journey. Aon stood beside him, her hand brushing against his lightly, a gesture of connection, trust, and warmth. Ramesh felt a deep longing to stay but promised to return soon, not just as a visitor, but as someone who had begun to understand their way of life. Walking back through the forest, Ramesh reflected on his time in the village. He had arrived with a simple goal, to buy a cow and help his family. But he was leaving with something far greater, a sense of belonging, understanding, and a bond with Aeon that touched his heart. He realized that life often gave unexpected gifts when one was open to learning, observing, and caring. By the time he reached his own village, the sky had turned dark and stars twinkled above. His family ran to greet him, eager to know about the journey. Ramesh smiled, feeling richer than ever, though not in material terms. He shared stories of the village, of Aeon, and of the warmth he had found there. His family listened with awe, realizing that Ramesh had changed. He carried hope, patience, and a new understanding of life. That night, as he lay in his small hut, Ramesh thought of Aeon and the village. He knew that this was only the beginning of a larger journey, one that would teach him about love, hope, and the true meaning of life. The cow he had originally sought seemed less important now. What mattered was the connection he had discovered and the possibility of a future filled with unexpected gifts. Ramesh closed his eyes with a sense of peace. For the first time, he understood that some journeys were not about what one set out to find, but about the people and experiences that changed a life forever. And deep in his heart, he knew that he would return to Aeon, to the village, and to the hope that now filled his life. Ramesh returned to the village a few days later, this time carrying more than just supplies. He had made up his mind to spend an extended period there, to understand the lives of the people and, in particular, to be near Aeon. From the moment he arrived, he felt a sense of comfort, as though he were coming home. The villagers welcomed him warmly, remembering his previous visit, and some even offered him small tasks to help with. Ramesh gladly accepted, eager to be useful and to learn. Aeon was there, as always, her eyes lighting up when she saw him. Though they still struggled to communicate in words, their connection had grown beyond language. Gestures, expressions, and simple actions carried meaning, forming a bridge between their worlds. Aeon led him to the cows, showing him how to care for them more efficiently. She demonstrated how to move gently around the animals so as not to frighten them, and how to recognize when a cow might be sick or tired. Ramesh watched attentively, absorbing every detail. Over the next few days, Ramesh and Aeon worked side by side, tending to the animals, repairing fences, and fetching water. They shared small jokes, playful gestures, and quiet moments of laughter. One afternoon, while carrying water, Ramesh stumbled over a rock and Aeon quickly steadied him. Their hands brushed, and for a moment both paused, smiling shyly at each other. That small, simple touch filled Ramesh with a warmth he had never experienced before. He realized that his feelings for Aeon were deepening, even though he had only known her for a short time. The village itself fascinated Ramesh. Life there was simple but full of meaning. Everyone had a role, and each person's contribution was valued. Children learned by helping and observing, elders shared wisdom, and adults worked tirelessly yet cheerfully. Ramesh admired the sense of unity and mutual respect. He noticed that problems were solved together, without blame or anger. For the first time, he understood how a community could thrive on care and cooperation rather than competition. Aeon began to show Ramesh more of her world. She led him through the forest, pointing out edible plants, medicinal herbs, and hidden paths that only those familiar with the land could find. She taught him how to read the sky and the weather, how to predict rain or sunshine, and how to move quietly through the forest without disturbing wildlife. Ramesh felt like a student in a school unlike any he had attended, learning lessons that were practical, natural, and deeply connected to life itself. Their bond grew not just through work but through shared stories. In the evenings, they would sit near a small fire, Aeon drawing pictures in the dirt to tell stories of her childhood, her family, and the history of the village. Ramesh shared tales of his own family, his struggles and dreams. Though words were limited, the emotions behind the stories conveyed everything they could not say aloud. They laughed, nodded, and sometimes grew quiet together, feeling a closeness that was hard to describe. One day, while tending to the fields, a small challenge arose. A storm had passed through the area the previous night, and part of the fence protecting the cows had collapsed. Ramesh and Aon worked together to repair it, but the task was not easy. The soil was muddy, the wood slippery, and the rain clouds threatened another shower. Despite the difficulty, they encouraged each other, sharing small words, gestures, and laughter to keep their spirits high. When the fence was finally repaired, they stepped back to admire their work, soaked and tired, yet proud. That shared struggle brought them closer, showing Ramesh how cooperation and patience could turn difficulties into triumphs. Life in the village taught Ramesh about resilience. Not every day was easy. Sometimes the water from the stream was scarce, or the weather made work challenging. But through it all, Aon and the villagers remained calm and resourceful. Ramesh began to realize that life was not about avoiding problems, but about facing them with determination and hope. Aon, in particular, inspired him. She never complained, never doubted, and faced each challenge with a quiet confidence that filled him with admiration. As weeks passed, Ramesh noticed that he was thinking about Aon constantly. He watched how she cared for the animals, helped the children, and supported the elders. Her strength, kindness, and wisdom had captured his heart completely. Yet, he also felt a deep respect for her independence. He did not want to rush anything or make her feel uncomfortable. Instead, he focused on being a reliable presence, someone she could trust and count on. One evening, after a long day of work, Ramesh and Aon sat near the fire. The village children were asleep, and the adults were resting in their homes. A gentle breeze blew, carrying the scent of flowers and fresh earth. Aon handed Ramesh a small piece of bread, and he smiled, taking it gratefully. They sat together quietly, watching the flames flicker. In that moment, words were not necessary. The shared silence spoke volumes, their growing affection, trust, and understanding. Ramesh also began to notice subtle moments of connection between Aon and him. When he made a mistake, she would correct him gently, her touch light on his arm. When he succeeded, she would nod with approval, her smile encouraging him to keep going. Sometimes, she would hum a small tune while working, and he would join in, creating a simple harmony that made the work feel lighter. Every day, he felt more part of her world, and she, in turn, seemed to accept him as part of hers. Despite the joy and closeness, Ramesh remained aware that he was an outsider. He did not want to impose or assume anything. He respected the village's customs, helped whenever he could, and observed quietly. His patience and humility seemed to earn him respect from the villagers, and even Aon appeared to notice his genuine intentions. This mutual respect formed the foundation of their growing bond, a bond based not on words alone but on actions, trust, and shared experiences. One day, a traveler passed through the village, bringing news from nearby towns. He spoke of challenges, bad weather, scarcity of resources, and stories of people helping one another to survive. Ramesh listened intently, realizing that life outside the village was not easy either. He felt grateful for the lessons he was learning here, not only about practical skills, but also about human kindness, resilience, and hope. Aon seemed pleased to see him absorb these lessons, as though she understood that he was becoming stronger, wiser, and more capable of facing life's challenges. The bond between Ramesh and Aon continued to grow in subtle ways. They shared meals, laughter, and work. They watched sunsets together, feeling a quiet joy in each other's presence. Ramesh realized that the feelings in his heart were more than admiration. They were beginning to turn into love. Yet, he was patient, knowing that love needed time, trust, and understanding to flourish. Aon, in her own way, seemed to feel the same, offering small gestures of kindness and attention that spoke volumes. As part 3 of his journey drew to a close, Ramesh understood something important. Life was about more than achieving goals or acquiring possessions. It was about connections, experiences, and learning to trust and care for others. Aeon had shown him a new way of seeing the world, one where patience, understanding, and mutual respect created a sense of belonging and love. He knew that his journey had only just begun, and that the path ahead held even greater lessons, joys, and surprises. Walking to his resting place that evening, Ramesh looked up at the stars, feeling a sense of hope and anticipation. The village had changed him. Aeon had touched his heart, and though challenges would come, he was ready to face them with the wisdom, patience, and courage he had learned. The connection he had found was precious, and he knew that in time it would shape not just his journey but his life forever. Time passed, and Ramesh grew more at home in the village. Each day brought new lessons, small joys, and challenges that shaped him. His bond with Aeon deepened steadily. What had started as curiosity and admiration had transformed into something stronger, a quiet, unspoken love built on trust, understanding, and shared experience. Ramesh found himself thinking of her constantly, from the first rays of morning sunlight to the quiet hours before sleep. Every glance, every small smile from her filled him with warmth and a sense of belonging he had never felt before. Aeon, too, seemed to accept his presence as part of her daily life. She guided him, laughed with him, and shared the small wonders of her world. One morning, she led him to a clearing near the river where wildflowers grew in abundance. She picked a few and handed them to him. Ramesh smiled, placing them carefully in his bag as if they were treasures. He understood the gesture. She was sharing a part of her world with him, offering trust and connection. He felt honored and touched by her kindness. As the days grew warmer, the village prepared for the seasonal harvest. Everyone pitched in, working side by side to gather crops, repair homes, and ensure that food would be plentiful for the months ahead. Ramesh helped eagerly, tending to the fields, carrying heavy baskets, and learning the best techniques for harvesting. Aeon guided him patiently, showing him which crops were ready and how to handle them carefully. Working together brought them closer. They laughed over mistakes, celebrated small successes, and comforted each other when tasks were difficult. One afternoon, while resting under the shade of a large oak tree, Aeon and Ramesh shared a quiet moment. He noticed how the sunlight played on her hair, how her eyes sparkled with intelligence and kindness. She spoke little, but her gentle gestures, offering him water, adjusting his hat from the sun, brushing dirt from his clothes, communicated care in a way words never could. Ramesh felt his heart swell with affection. He realized that he had come to love her deeply, and he wanted to show her, even if he did not yet have the right words. The village itself reflected the warmth and harmony that surrounded them. People worked together, respected each other, and celebrated life's small moments. Children learned by observation and guidance, elders shared wisdom, and everyone contributed to the community's well-being. Ramesh admired the balance of independence and cooperation, realizing that the village's strength lay in its unity. Through it all, Aeon's presence was constant and her influence on him profound. She had taught him patience, humility, and the importance of care. One evening, a small celebration was held in the village to mark the end of the harvest season. The villagers gathered around a large fire, singing, dancing, and sharing stories. Ramesh participated eagerly, learning the songs, clapping along, and even joining a few dances. Aeon smiled at him throughout, encouraging him with nods and gentle gestures. The night was filled with laughter, music, and a sense of togetherness. Ramesh felt as though he had truly found a second home, a place where love and hope were woven into the very fabric of daily life. As the celebration ended and people returned to their homes, Ramesh and Aeon walked along a quiet path near the river. The moon reflected in the water, creating a silver trail that seemed to guide them forward. Ramesh felt the moment was right. He reached out, gently taking her hand. Aeon looked at him, her eyes soft but steady. Though no words were spoken, they understood each other completely. their hands clasped together, a simple gesture that carried the depth of their growing love. The days that followed brought more shared moments of joy and understanding. They worked together, cooked together, and explored the forest side by side. Ramesh learned not only practical skills, like tracking animals, identifying edible plants, and predicting weather, but also lessons in empathy, patience, and emotional strength. Aeon shared her knowledge generously, guiding him without ever making him feel inadequate. Ramesh felt grateful for every moment, knowing that he was growing not just as a helper or a friend, but as a partner, someone capable of love and commitment. Challenges arose, as they always do in life. One day, a sudden storm swept through the village, knocking down parts of fences and scattering tools and supplies. Ramesh and Aeon worked tirelessly to repair the damage. Mud and rain soaked their clothes, and the wind threatened to undo their efforts. Yet through the struggle they supported each other, offering encouragement and sharing laughs at small mishaps. When the storm finally passed, they stood together, exhausted but proud. The shared hardship strengthened their bond, teaching them that love could flourish even in difficult times. Ramesh also noticed small ways in which Aeon's presence transformed his understanding of life. He saw her care for the children, the elders, and even the smallest animals. He observed her wisdom in making decisions, balancing patience with decisiveness. Her laughter and joy were infectious, and he found himself smiling more, appreciating life's small wonders in a way he never had before. Aeon had become not only a companion but a guiding light, showing him the power of love, hope, and kindness. One evening, while sitting by the fire after a long day of work, Ramesh realized that his heart was full. He felt a sense of certainty he had never experienced before. The love he felt for Aeon was real, steady, and enduring. He also felt hope, not only for himself but for the future they could share. He imagined a life together, supporting each other, sharing joys and challenges, and creating a family built on mutual respect and care. For the first time, he felt truly confident that love could transform a life completely. Aeon, too, seemed to sense the depth of their connection. She offered quiet gestures of affection, small touches, shared smiles, and an unwavering presence that spoke louder than words. Ramesh understood that she trusted him, valued him, and perhaps felt the same way he did. Their bond had grown naturally, without pressure or haste, built on trust, understanding, and shared experience. This mutual respect formed the foundation of a love that would endure challenges and uncertainties. As Part 4 drew to a close, Ramesh and Aeon stood together, looking out over the village from a small hilltop. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden light over the fields, the river, and the homes below. The villagers were busy with evening chores, children laughed in the distance, and the soft sounds of the forest filled the air. Ramesh felt a deep sense of peace. He had arrived in the village seeking a cow, but he had found something far more valuable: a woman who inspired him, a community that nurtured him, and a hope for a future filled with love and purpose. In that quiet moment, he realized that life's true treasures were not material but emotional and spiritual. The love and hope he felt were gifts that could not be measured or bought. Aeon had shown him that connection, kindness, and understanding were more important than anything else. Ramesh knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he and Aeon could face them together, drawing strength from each other and from the community they now both belonged to. That night, as Ramesh lay beneath the stars, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From a young man seeking a simple cow to someone who had discovered love, hope, and a new way of seeing life, he felt gratitude beyond words. He knew that his life had changed forever, and that the bond he shared with Aeon was the beginning of something enduring, beautiful, and transformative. With a heart full of love and hope, Ramesh drifted into sleep, ready for the next chapter of life, together with the woman who had become his guiding light. The day finally came when Ramesh knew he had to return to his own village. He had spent many weeks in the forest village, learning, working, and growing alongside Aon. But now, with the harvest complete and his heart filled with love, he wanted to take Aon with him and introduce her to his family. It was a decision that required courage, for he was bringing someone from a different culture into his home, and he knew not everyone might understand at first. Yet, he felt certain that this was the right step, for love and hope were guiding his actions. Aon agreed to go with him, though she felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had grown fond of Ramesh and had come to trust him deeply, but leaving her village was not easy. Her community had been her world, and the thought of venturing into an unfamiliar place was daunting. Still, she held his hand, and together they began the journey back, carrying their few belongings, a small cow Ramesh had finally purchased, and hearts full of hope. The journey home was long, but the companionship of Aon made it lighter. Along the way, Ramesh taught her simple words from his language, and she taught him more about her traditions and ways of seeing the world. They shared laughter, sang songs, and supported each other through rough paths and steep hills. Every step strengthened their bond and prepared them for the life they were about to begin together. When they finally reached Ramesh's village, the sight of familiar homes and fields filled him with both relief and anticipation. His family rushed to greet him, their faces showing worry at first, but their concern quickly turned to surprise when they saw Aon beside him. She smiled shyly, bowing slightly in respect, and Ramesh introduced her through gestures and simple words. His parents and siblings were cautious but curious. They had heard tales of distant villages and people, but meeting someone from such a place was a first for them. Ramesh took the time to explain everything: the village she came from, the kindness they had shown him, the lessons he had learned, and the connection he shared with Aon. His family listened attentively, slowly warming to her presence. Aon, in turn, showed respect and humility, helping around the house, assisting with chores, and interacting gently with his younger siblings. Her kindness and intelligence gradually won their hearts. Over the next days, life began to settle into a new rhythm. Aon learned the ways of Ramesh's village, and the family began to understand and appreciate her contributions. She was patient, teaching them simple techniques she had learned in her village, whether it was caring for the cow, tending the small garden, or cooking meals with care. The children adored her, and even the elders began to respect her wisdom. Slowly, the initial hesitation faded, replaced by acceptance and admiration. Ramesh watched this transformation with gratitude. He realized that love was not just about two people, it could extend to families and communities, bridging differences and creating understanding. Aon's presence had brought joy, hope, and a sense of completeness to their home. He felt proud of the courage it had taken for both of them to step into the unknown and for his family to embrace this new chapter. Life together was not without challenges. Aon had to adjust to new customs, new ways of living, and the unfamiliar environment. Ramesh, too, had to balance his responsibilities at home with the care and attention Aon needed to feel comfortable. They faced misunderstandings, small frustrations, and moments of uncertainty, but each challenge was met with patience, communication, and mutual support. Slowly, they built a life rooted in respect, trust, and love. Over time, their bond deepened further. They shared stories, celebrated festivals together, and taught each other lessons from their respective worlds. Aon showed Ramesh how to see beauty in simplicity, while Ramesh taught her about his family's traditions and ways of living. Their relationship became an example to others, demonstrating that love could overcome differences, build understanding, and bring hope to everyone around. The cow Ramesh had initially come for became more than a simple possession. It symbolized the journey that had begun with a simple goal but had transformed into something far greater. It reminded them of the path they had traveled, the lessons they had learned, and the partnership they had forged. Together they cared for it, ensuring it thrived alongside them, just as their love and hope flourished in the new life they were creating. As months passed, the village began to embrace Aeon as one of their own. She participated in festivals, helped with communal work, and shared her wisdom and skills. People admired her resilience, kindness, and willingness to learn. Ramish's family, once hesitant, now celebrated her presence, seeing how she brought harmony, joy, and hope to their lives. The village, once cautious, had opened its heart to her, and in doing so, they strengthened the bonds of community and love. Ramish often reflected on the journey that had brought them together. What had started as a simple errand to buy a cow had led him to a life full of unexpected gifts. He had found a companion who brought love, hope, and understanding into his world. He had discovered the power of patience, trust, and mutual respect. And he had learned that true wealth was not measured in possessions, but in the depth of connection, the warmth of love, and the hope for the future. One evening, as the sun set over the village and painted the fields in shades of gold and amber, Ramish and Aeon stood together by the river. The children played nearby, and the elders rested in the soft evening light. They looked at each other, hands intertwined, smiles reflecting years of shared learning, trust, and affection. Ramish felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey, for Aeon, for his family, and for the unexpected blessings life had offered. He realized that love and hope could transform lives in ways that nothing else could. Aeon had given him not just companionship, but a vision of a life filled with purpose, joy, and connection. Together, they would face the future with courage, patience, and unwavering support for one another. The village, the family, and the bonds they had formed were all part of a new chapter, one filled with promise and endless possibilities. From that day forward, Ramish and Aeon lived their lives with love at the center. They nurtured their home, cared for the cow, helped their family, and contributed to the community. Every day was a lesson, every challenge an opportunity, and every shared moment a treasure. Their journey had begun with a simple goal, but had evolved into a story of love, hope, and the enduring power of human connection. Ramish often thought back to the day he had set out to buy a cow, and he smiled. He had expected a simple errand, but had returned with a wife who brought him love and hope beyond measure. Together, they had built a life grounded in respect, understanding, and care, showing that the greatest journeys in life often lead to the most beautiful and unexpected destinations. And so their story continued, one of love, hope, and shared dreams, reminding everyone that sometimes the smallest steps lead to the greatest transformations, and that the heart, when open, can find joy and fulfillment in the most surprising places.